Carolyn Dube here. What's the play for today? Well, today I'm sharing the 7 practical reasons I use stencils on a gel plate. Now, these 7 reasons are in no particular order, well, except for the very last one. The very last one is my top, my go-to, the reason why I just can't stop playing with stencils on gel plates. But the first 6, they are in no particular order. Practical reason number 7 is speed. This is hands down the fastest way I've ever found to stencil. And this is very handy on those days when I'm feeling extremely impatient, or if I need to do multiples. If I've got to make a whole bunch of something, this is just flat out the fastest way. So I've got the paint on there, I simply slap that stencil on and bring in the paper. Now the paper that I'm using here, this is a 90-pound cardstock, and it's not that it's the best paper, it's my personal preference, the one I like. And whenever you're using a detailed stencil and a heavier paper, like the cardstock here, I'll use my fingertips to go over it, because this may blow your mind, but anywhere that the paint does not touch the paper, you're not going to have any kind of pattern transfer. So that's what I'm doing there with my fingers, is just making sure that I've got good contact between the paint and the paper. Practical reason number 6 is you get a variety of looks from any stencil, which means you get a lot more mileage out of your supplies. And this is really important for supplies like stencils and gel plates because they never run out, they don't go bad, you can't use them up. One stencil can be used thousands and thousands of times. Same thing for a gel plate. And so that's why being able to get a variety of looks is very handy so that you get the most out of those supplies. Now this stencil is a narrow stencil and wouldn't cover a complete page by itself. But by repeating it, I can fill any amount of space that I want with it, and it also gives it a fun other look. Oh, and by the way, as I'm placing those little castles on there, what I'm doing is making sure that things don't line up perfectly. I'm purposely offsetting it a little bit, so that way there's just a little bit of variation from one row to the next. And speaking of variation, color is another way you can get a whole lot of variation with stencils and gel plates. Now here I'm using a teal color, and I could go with just one color and this would be a great print. But I think I'm gonna wanna add another color. Now I'm gonna go with 2 colors on this one, but just so you know, you can do any number of colors. If you wanna use 3 colors or 5 colors or every color you've got, you absolutely can do that when you're gel printing with stencils. All right, so I've got all the castles on there. Now I'm gonna bring in a darker color. Now I'm going to do something with that darker color that is a really big challenge for me, and this is definitely a personal issue, and that is getting a thin layer of paint on there, because I love to put wonderful thick layers of paint on. So I had to concentrate just to put a little less paint here. And you can tell that it's a little less paint because as I'm brayering it around, you can still see the castle pattern from underneath. So once I've got that evenly spread around, then I'm coming in with a piece of paper. And once I've got it pressed down there, I'm going to give it a good 2-3 minutes to just grab all the paint, and then I'll lift up the pull. And thanks to the magic of technology, you did not have to wait those 3 minutes to see this print. And a little bit later in the video, I'm going to show you a wildly different looking print that was made with this same stencil. The next print I'm going to make uses a stencil with words on it. And anytime you've got words on a stencil, when you put the stencil on the gel plate, you want to put it backwards. That way, when you take your print, the words will be facing the right direction. And notice that I'm pressing the stencil down. That way the plate grabs it and will just hold it in place. I grabbed this stencil to show you practical reason number 5, and that is details. Because stencils can be very detailed. You can have all these wonderful little areas that bring a design to life. And when you're using them on a gel plate, you can quickly and easily capture all of those. Did you notice how practical reason number 7 showed up again? Nah, that's because I'm pretty much an impatient person and I love to do things quickly. So once I've got the paint on here, all I need to do is lift up the stencil. And again, remember, because these are words, the stencil went on backwards. And that way in the print, the words will be facing the right direction. Now, one of the other nice things to create some variety in what you're doing is you can change up the paper that you're using. You can use colored cardstock. I've got black cardstock here. You can use junk mail, book text, just about any kind of paper you can use to take a print. And speaking of paper, you can use paper with paint on it. This one that I've got here, this was from cleaning up my brayer. This is also where I was using a stencil, part of my Arches stencil there that created some of those shapes. Well, I'm going to use that paper with this stencil to show you practical reason number 4, using every drop of paint. Notice how as I put the stencil on here, I'm pressing it down to make sure the plate has grabbed it, and that'll hold it in place. And then I'm going to add some paint on here. But I want you to notice what I'm doing with it. I'm only staying in the center of the stencil. I'm actually not going all the way to the edge of the stencil. And what that's going to create is a little more of an organic edge to it, as opposed to that sharp line. And that's another way you can get so much out of a stencil by just changing how much of it that you're using. Now I'm going to flip that stencil right over and I'm going to press it on the plate. Because that paint that was on that side, this is how I clean off my stencil. None of that paint and pattern has to be wasted. Now I'm quickly going to grab that piece of paper and put it on there to grab that paint, because it is a very thin layer of paint so it can dry quickly. But now I've got little hints of that pattern in there. But I'm not going to stop there because I've got all that wonderful color and pattern happening there. Now I could take all of it at one time, or I can just take little pieces and parts of it. So I'm just going to put a little hint of that pattern up on that page. Now, even though I'm not going to use all of that paint here on this page, I'll use a little bit more, but it won't be all of it. What do I do with it then? Because I don't want a drop of paint and pattern to ever be wasted. Well, then I can grab another piece of paper and add that paint to it. Or I can grab more paint, more stencils, and add layers on top of it. When you're playing with stencils and gel plates, you have so many options of different ways that you can use every single drop of that paint. Now this stencil, inspired by the buildings in Venice, you can stencil it just as it is and it's fantastic. Or you can use it to create some other looks. This print, it was made with this Venetian stencil. And this is practical reason number 3. There are things I can do with a gel plate and a stencil that I just can't do with a paintbrush. When you're using a stencil and a gel plate, you can do one layer like on the left, or you can do multiple layers and build up that complexity. Like on this print, you might notice a little bit of gold flickering in the light. There's just a little touch of it because sometimes I just want to have a little touch and not overpower it. Here's another example of how stencils can grow with you. So the first one on the left, that was 1 or 2 layers. The print that's on the right is a whole bunch of layers, but they all use the exact same stencil and gel plate. These prints are all examples of practical reason number 2, it grows with you. As you're ready to add more complexity to build up those layers, your stencils and gel plate can grow along with you. So how do you go from doing single layer, single color prints to making complex multicolored layered prints that you love? Well, it involves knowing the key factors to look for and how certain things are going to behave. So what are those factors? How do you know what to look for? Well, that is more than what I can put in one single video. And that's why I created Stencilrific layers, so that you can see how a stencil like this can make this exact print, how you can get such an abstract look from something like this to get more out of your stencils. You'll also see this print being made and what the trick is to getting just that little hint of black on there that really makes the print pop and take it up to the next level. Now we're also going to talk about color in this workshop as it relates to stencils and gel printing. So when you want to play with the entire rainbow, like on this print, you can, and you will know how to do it without a touch of mud happening. And we're also going to make this print. This one that has all that depth of color, those darker areas, those lighter areas, that hint of gold, how this was all done, it is completely in there for you in the workshop. Now these are just some of the prints because there are 19 different lessons in this workshop. And they're all designed to build on your knowledge. So as you go through, we take a skill and then you see how you use that to create more complex prints, because this is just a step-by-step kind of print when you know the order to do the steps in. And now the number 1 practical reason why I use stencils on a gel plate, and that is it's fun. Seeing those colors and patterns mingle and play when I lift that print, well, there's no better word for it than fun. And you might be thinking, wait a minute, is fun a practical reason to do something? It is in my book. because that fun is one of the ways I deal with things when life is just super, super stressful, or the world is just getting to be a bit much to deal with. That's when playing around on my gel plate really helps me decompress and frankly have a better day. And that is what the fun of gel printing does for me. Now, one of the things that I've heard from students in my workshop is that when they understand why the paint is doing what it's doing, why the plate is acting that way, how they gotta print, when they can direct it, when they know that they can do things on command, when they can steer and guide those prints to look the way they want, they have even more fun with their gel plates. And that's why I created Stencilrific Layers, because I want you to have as much fun with your gel plate as I'm having with mine. And one of the best ways to have more fun with it is to understand why it's doing what it's doing. So if you're interested in learning more about Stencilrific Layers, you can find all the details over on my website at acolorfuljourney.com. And yep, I've got a link down below for you too. Well, thanks so much for joining me for today's play. If you've enjoyed this video, if you had fun, I'd so appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. And of course, if you know of somebody that you think would enjoy gel printing and stencils, share this video with them so that way they can join in the fun too. Well, thanks so much for letting me be a part of your colorful journey.